Let's make some Irish chains. This is a two-part video. In part one, I'm going to show you this scrappy version of the Irish chain and a second and different one from Yardage. They're super easy. I'll show you everything you need to know. So let's get started. You know how I love scrap quilting, so let's start with the scrappy version. These are 2.5-inch squares and you need 200 of these. The background is going to be pale blue, so these are also 2.5-inch squares and you need 160 of those. Now for the background, this is a scrappy quilt and I have two colours, or I should say two fabrics of the same colour. Out of these light blues, I've cut 6.5-inch squares and you need 40 of these. The finished size of this quilt will be about 54 inches. So if you keep watching after this, I'm going to show you a different kind of an Irish chain. I'm going to sew it in a different way and it won't be a scrappy quilt. And you'll see that it's actually much quicker and easier to sew this that way. But, you know, scrappy quilts are so much fun. I don't think, though, that people realise that it actually takes longer. All the cutting and then all the sewing the individual pieces. But when we get to the other quilt, you'll see what I mean. So keep watching for the second version. The first thing I'm going to do is make some 9 patch blocks. So that's 5 of the dark fabrics and 4 of the light fabrics. And I'm going to lay them out in this pattern that you see here with the 5 darks like this. Now it is important that you lay them in this order specifically. It won't work if you lay them in a different order. There are the 5 darks, and now we're going to add in the 4 light coloured fabrics. And I'm just randomly picking up from either pile of the pale blue. It really doesn't matter. The tone is exactly the same, so it won't affect the pattern. So that's the pattern you're going to make right there. Now for most of this quilt, I will be chain sewing, but here I'm just going to make the one block to show you the assembly. When I've done that, I'll show you how to make this second and quicker block out of yardage, and then I'll show you how to assemble the quilt. With right sides together, I'm using a 1/4-inch seam and keeping them in the exact order that I've got them laying down. So as long as I keep these in order, it should work out just fine. The 3 rows are sewn and the pattern's still correct. Do you see that okay? The top and the bottom ones are actually the same. The centre one is just the opposite way around. So I'm going to take these to the iron, I'm going to press them open, and then we'll join the 3 rows together. Now on this project, if I always press these to the dark side, that means that I won't have any problem nesting the seams together. And you may think I'd talk about nesting the seams together too much, but it just makes such a better finish if you can do it. It doesn't work out on every quilt, but it makes it smoother, less bulky around the seams and easier to work with. So I'm just pinning these at the seams so we get a nice finish. Right, so I'm just going to press that open. This is ready. I'm going to make 41 of these. Isn't that simple? I'll chain sew the others off camera, just varying the dark colours as much as possible. And because I'm chain sewing, it's really not going to take that long, but even so, there is a quicker way, and that's what I'm going to show you next. This will actually be the first step in making the second Irish chain, which is going to be different and cut out of yardage, but this is a much quicker method of making that central 9 patch. All the darks are the same, and I'm cutting 2.5-inch strips. I also need 2.5-inch strips in the light, and I'm cutting 3 of those. Get down, Daisy. Come on, get down. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sew these. Obviously I'm going to open them out. I'm going to sew them together so I have 3 arranged like that. And 3 arranged like that. So I'm just going to open these out, put them right sides together and sew down this edge. And I'm doing a 1/4-inch seam here. Here I'm sewing the 3rd strip on. Alright, those are done now. So you can see I have this strip that has the light in the middle, the dark on the outsides, and then the other strip is the opposite. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to press these open, and I am going to press to the dark side, and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. Now here are my 2 sets of strips all sewn together. And I'm going to cut these now. You do want to line these up very carefully because you do want an accurate cut. Just going to level up the edge here. I'm going to cut this into 2.5-inch strips. I'm just cutting 2 for now because I'm just making a sample block to show you how to do it. Each block needs 2 from this strip and 1 from the other. Now, can you see there is that what I have is just the same as the block I was making for the other quilt. So I'm going to sew that one to that one, that one to that one, and up to now it just looks the same as the first block. I can nest those seams the way that I like to do it. So I think you can see that that's a lot quicker and easier than the other way. Okay, so I just need to press that open. Now I'm going to make another kind of Irish chain with this. I'm going to do more to this block, and so I'll show you that. We'll finish the blue one, then I'll come back and I'll show you this second Irish chain and what we're going to do that's a little bit different. Back to the blue Irish chain here. And my blocks are all made because all it takes is that 9 patch with the dark and lights and the plain 6.5-inch squares. So I'm just laying this out on the floor and I'm just alternating. So the top row begins with the 9 patch and then it alternates along. On each row are 9 total blocks and there are 9 rows of those. Now that I've got these all laid out here, I'm just going to go along row by row and I'm going to put right sides together. This is just to keep them in order. I'm going to put that one over there, put a pin in it, open it out, put the next one on, and of course I will match these up properly when I take them to the sewing machine to sew. I'm going to go like that all the way along. I've already done this top row, so it's already roughly pinned, ready for me to sew. And this just helps me to keep them in order. And it doesn't matter that much what order these are in, except that at the moment I've got it so that two the same aren't next to each other. And I'm just trying to keep it like that. So if they do get a little bit mixed up, it's not going to be a big deal. So I'm going to take these to the sewing machine now and start sewing them together. And I'm just going to work my way all along this row. And I don't really need to show you any more of that. It's just repetitive sewing seam after seam, which is very relaxing in its own way and I enjoy it. So that row's all sewn together now. I'm going to lay it down and I'm just going to repeat that with every row all the way along. So I've got all my pieces sewn together in strips and laid out on the floor here, and I have pressed them. And what I'm going to do now is go up here to the top of the quilt. And I'm just going to, flip down this top row. I'm going to match these seams and sew all the way along this row. So I'm just going along here pinning this. Now these are really easy to put together because you have the plain square and the 9 patch alternating. So just choose which way you want to press and stick to that. So for example, if you always press to the plain square, then your seams are going to just sit nicely and be nice and flat. And of course that's not always true, but in this particular pattern it's true and it does make it easy. Seams are going to be out of my view when I sew, so I want to make sure they're going to lay the right way. These two actually will lay the right way. You know, under the machine it naturally pushes the seams like that, and seeing as they're pressed in that direction, that won't be a problem. So I don't really need to put a pin in either of those. Back here, this one, it's laying up, so that what would naturally happen was the sewing machine would push that back out of place, and I don't want it laying that way. So each one that's laying in that direction, I'm just putting a pin in to hold it. All right, that's ready to sew now. And again, I'm still doing 1/4 inch seam on this whole quilt, and I'm going to just machine down there. All right, so the first seam is done. I'm going to press that open, but look, can you see there how neatly that nesting the seams to make these corners, every single one of them will exactly be point to point, and that's what you're aiming for. So I've marked this, so when I lay it back down I'll remember which is the top corner, which is, okay, is that one. So I'm going to lay this back down in place. When I do that, The next one below it, I'll turn up and sew to this one. I'm just going to continue doing that, and all my rows will just be sewn together. And this quilt top's finished now. You can see the Irish chain pattern there. It's not going to have a border, it'll just have a narrow blue binding around the edge. So I'm going to continue on now and show you how I'm going to make this second Irish quilt in this alternate colour pattern here. So I've made, I showed you how to make these 9 patches, so I've made all of these. There's 13 here. But we're going to take this one step further. So let me just select one here and put the others to one side for a minute. Now I'm actually going to make this a bigger block, so there's going to be an extra chain. So this is now 6.5 inches square. So I've cut some of these. These are 6.5 by 2.5. I need 4 for each block. There's 13 blocks, so I've got 52 of these. I also need more 2.5 inch squares. Again, I need 4 for each block, so I have 52 of these too. So the easiest way to do this is take it to the sewing machine and just sew one light coloured to each side, and at the same time sew a black square to 2 of these. So I'm going to take these all to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to chain sew all of them at the same time. There's no direction to these 9 patch squares, just sew the pieces on opposite sides. I'm chain sewing the squares onto the 6.5 inch strips here. Really, it's better to sew these side pieces onto the 9 patch first. So I'm just going to go on like that. I'm going to chain sew all of these. Then we'll move on to the next step. I've got this attached on here, a plain at each side, and now I'm just going to put these strips at the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to fold that down, sew down the same on this side. So I'll just show you this one done, and then I'll go ahead and chain sew all the others. And again, you want to press those seams so that you can nest them together and get that perfect finish. It's a really simple block and it'll look really professional. So I'm going to press this open. And you can see it's the same idea with the long crosses of the dark. This block is bigger. The actual measurement of it is 10.5 inches. And so not only is it quicker to sew in this way, but because these blocks are 10.5 inches, I only need to make 13 like this and 12 of the plain, whereas the other quilt, which just had the centre part, the 6.5 inch size, needed 81 blocks. So of course that's a lot more sewing. So I'll go ahead and chain sew all the rest of the blocks, make those, and this is the fabric that's going to be the picture in the centre, which again is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to cut these in 10.5 inch squares. And it's going to be a little difficult. I don't want to be cutting the little birds' heads off if possible, but some may be sacrificed. We'll have to see. So I'll cut those all out and then I'll lay it out and show you what it's going to look like. I have my blocks finished and cut. So these have 13 of these, 10.5 inches square, and this is the alternate that I'm going to do with the birds. And I did try to cut the birds as kindly as possible, but it's just impossible with this kind of fabric. So I just did my best. There's still plenty of birds on there. These are also 10.5 inches. Now with this one, it's not like the scrap one. These are all identical, so don't have to worry about laying them out, making sure they're in the right order. So the layout's just going to be the same. It's going to be 5 of these in a row, alternating. and then another 2 the same. Then the second row will be the bird first. I'm probably moving my camera too much. The bird first and then the chain block. So it's going to be 5 blocks across and 5 rows down. And just like the other one, I'm just going to sew all the way across the top and then the rows together. So I'm not going to show that again on camera. This time though, I'm just going to pick it up and chain sew, because it really doesn't matter whereabouts these fall. It's just going to look the same no matter which way I sew it. So chain sewing is going to be a lot quicker. I'll go ahead, chain sew it, and I'll bring it back finished and show you what it looks like. Again, I'm not going to put a border on this. I'll put it together unquilted, and the binding around the edge will finish it off. The blue one's finished and the binding is on around the edges. I still have to finish this one off. But I had so much fun making it, and I had more of the bird fabric left. So I did go ahead and make a third bird quilt. You can see it's almost the same. The fabric's just slightly different colours there. In part 2, which will be my next video, we're going to make a Sashiko quilt. I have been making some Sashiko blocks, and Jess and I will be making another Irish chain. Jess. Using these, I have a few more to make, and I have this layer cake of shibori dyed style fabric. I'm always interested in trying to use Sashiko in my quilts. Looks like Jess's too. And if you hit the notification bell, you won't miss that video. So helpful to have a cat. Bye from both of us. Thanks for watching.